Hey guys, welcome back. How are you? My name's Teddy, and today we're going to be building in the sunny side up design Meshroom S V2. Retails for $159.99 USD before tax, and it fits ITX, mATX, and ATX motherboards. This case has a volume of 15.04 liters, and you can stuff up to an ATX power supply in here, depending on what configuration you run. And there's a multitude of different ways you can set up your build. This case is pretty versatile, and I enjoy building in it. This case can fit some of the biggest GPUs on the market, up to 4-slot GPUs, 343 millimeters in length and 152 millimeters in width. And it also comes with a pre-installed PCIe 5.0 riser cable. So step one for me, and if you're following along with the build, I'm going to be removing the front-facing bracket, so that way we can fit in our Arctic Cooling Liquid Freezer 3 Pro 280mm AIO. This is a thick radiator and fan combination, so removing this is the only way you're going to get it to fit. So go ahead and remove it. The next thing we're going to do is install our power supply. I'm using the ROG Strix Loki 1000 watt SFXL PSU. I've used this in a couple other builds. And once again, I'll be using the Gigabyte X870i Aorus Pro Ice Mini-ITX motherboard paired with a Ryzen 9 9950X 3D and 32 gigabytes of G-Skill Trident Z DDR5 6400, and I am running that at a 1:1 ratio to get the best performance out of it. Next, what you want to do is install your brackets for your CPU block. And these are labeled left and right, and they only go on one way, so you can't really mess this up. So just look at that label on there and put them on accordingly. If you're going to be using the same AIO that I'm using, it's going to be crucial that you keep your cables as far away from where the fans are going to be pushing air through the radiator as possible. Because I'll be setting it up using the fans as a exhaust, so I'm going to be pushing air through the radiator and out to the front side of the case. So you want to keep your cables as far away from that as possible. So keep everything as close to the left-hand side of the case as you can, and keep it kind of tucked up at least under or through the back side if you can. So using this little central spine where the PCIe riser cable comes through is a really good use of doing that. Even though this case is fully mesh, it's still an enclosure, so the components inside are still going to maintain some heat and get heat soaked without proper ventilation. So I'm going to be doing what I can and adding an extra Arctic P12 slim fan up to the top here. Now there is a special 3D printable bracket you can get from the SSUPD website, but I didn't do that on this one. I think I 3D printed enough for this. And there's these two holes right here that actually align perfectly with the fan hole. So this is perfectly fine. It's perfectly stable. So that's what I did. So along with that top P12 fan, I'm also getting some Thermalright TL-B6W 60mm performance fans, and I'm going to be attaching them to a special 3D printed bracket that I got from the SSUPD website as well. The STL file is free to download, so if you have a 3D printer, you can go ahead and print these and order those fans for some extra GPU exhaust, which this build is going to need because I'm putting in a 5090. So once you've done some of your preliminary cable management on the GPU side, what you want to do is go ahead and install your GPU while the front panel is still off. That'll make it way easier to put those screws in the bottom that actually hold the GPU in place. And for this build, I am using the RTX 5090 Founders Edition. So this is a blow-through style cooler. So it's going to take the fresh air from the outside of the case and it's going to blow it directly through. And I know what you might be thinking is that all that heat's going to get trapped inside of that little space that's in between the top of the card and the spine. So you're going to be blowing all that hot air into your motherboard. So I actually was worried about that too. So that's kind of why this took me so long to get out, is because I was using the RTX 5090 in a couple different builds, trying to see what worked and what didn't. There was a lot of interesting things I found out. So I was pretty skeptical about this build in particular, but as it turns out, this particular build had much better thermals than any of the other builds that I tried. So if you are using RTX 5090 FE, you can actually safely run it in this configuration. And this is what I meant by installing this card first before you put that front spine on, is because try reaching those with the radiator and the front bracket on. It's a pain in the ass. So there is about 3/4 of an inch in between the center spine and the top of the GPU. So it gives plenty of room for that hot air to escape, which, like I said before, I was pretty skeptical about. Okay, up to this point, this is what we're looking at. We're pretty much 3/4 of the way done. All I want to do right now is to really get the cables more situated and in a position where they're not going to be going into those fans, which I wish I could use like fan grills, but they're so close to that center spine that you can't really put fan grills on it to keep the cables out. So the only way to do this is more zip ties. And on the subject of zip ties, I had somebody comment in one of my previous videos about how zip ties are unsafe to use, which could technically be true, but if you're not over clamping them down, like, they're perfectly safe to use, and really one of the only ways to do cable management in some of these small builds. So finally we get to install our radiator onto that top bracket. That little groove on the bracket shows that that's the actually top of the case. So what you want to do is mount this with the tubes down. So with your tubes down, go ahead and push it back into its original starting position. You can see where your top IO actually fits in that little slot, and you can push the top in first. I found it to be easier to do it this way and get a couple screws started, and then flip it on its backside so that the front panel is facing up, and then push it down the rest of the way and attach all of those screws to the rest of the frame. And once you do that, your radiator is going to be installed and your case is going to be back to normal. So we're pretty much done. The last thing you want to do is just make sure that nothing is getting into the fans. And if you need to go ahead and use some more zip ties, which I had to do, go ahead and take this time and do that. Just make sure everything is pulled as far left as possible and not going to move. So that's what I went ahead and did. I didn't over tighten anything. Nothing is, dangerously tight. It's just secure, so that you can see that there's not very much of a gap there in between the fan. It's probably less than 1 millimeter, but it's fine and it works. And if you're going to be using this radiator and fan combo to expel all that hot air, this is probably the only way you can do this. So the final component of the build is a custom 3D printed bottom bracket that I found on Thingiverse. I did make it a little bit taller and added some cable management, little rings in there, but this will sit at the bottom of the case and will allow me to plug in directly onto the back of that little panel, because I got a HDMI 2.1 and a DisplayPort 2.0 panel mount extenders. So you're going to plug those into your GPU, and this will help me when I take this from place to place without having to get under there and plug in and unplug my cables all the time, because that's also kind of a pain in the ass. And this is also just a prototype. What I did was I quickly 3D printed it. I had to print it in 2 different sections, and then I super glued it together. I didn't really post process it that much. I sanded it down some, and I sprayed a couple layers of enamel on there. But what I really want to do is use these dimensions now that I know that they're pretty close, and I actually want to build this out of some really nice wood and give it a really nice wood grain finish. And I think that would kind of elevate the look of this case a little bit more. Let me know what you think down in the comments of that idea. If you want to see it, I can make a video about it. So this kind of illustrates my last point, is that now I can plug my HDMI or my DisplayPort directly into that using those panel mount extenders. I don't have to reach under there and plug it in directly to my GPU every time. So topping out at a cool 78 degrees on the CPU, we hit a 43903 on Cinebench. This current run, since I was recording, it's a little bit lower, but it was 43903, and that's with a just slight undervolt, and I'm not using the PBO enhancement, but this is what we got. And then on Cinebench R24, we got a 2507. So I didn't really do any gaming benchmarks. What I would like to do in, like, when I benchmark a game is actually just play the games that people are playing. And so I'm going to be using Doom, The Dark Ages, with everything cranked. So I've got full path tracing, everything on Ultra Nightmare, and HDR and all that. So this is that game running. So I tried to find an area that had a lot of enemies and things popping in, so it would actually the best chance of throttling and kind of nuking the system. But here we go. we're playing through it, and I don't think I saw 70 degrees on either the CPU or the GPU, and that's pretty impressive. So right now, the CPU is hitting 61 degrees, 62 degrees, 63, and your GPU is sitting at 65 to 67. So everything is really manageable in this case with this setup. So if you like what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and I'm going to let this gameplay run so you can just watch if you want. This is in the same recording session, so everything's should be heat soaked by now, and you can kind of see what this looks like. So if you have any questions, feel free to stop by in the comments and ask. I try to answer as many as I can. I get carried away with life sometimes, and I don't get back to these things right away. So if you think I'm ignoring you, it's not my intention. I just have other things going on. But once again, my name is Teddy. This is Teedster. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Teedster out.